Hey guys, it's Anna. So for today's video, I'll be reacting to Vanity first video, how Stranger Things SFX artists created Vecna. So guys, if you're new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet, and let's get on to the reaction. Okay guys.
He was covered in like KY jelly and lube and a kind of a wet looking gel, so we gave Vecna this kind of glossy sort of look every day. That was our last part of the application process. Our last 10-15 minutes would be the four of us literally getting this product all over him to make him look really, really glossy. And occasionally he would meet producers or some of the other cast members. They'd come up, shake his hand and just regret it immediately because they were covered in slime.
It's time for your suffering to end.
Hi, I'm Barry Gower, and I'm going to break down how we created the creature prosthetics for Stranger Things Season 4. We were approached by the Duffer Brothers. They were after their own iconic villain for this season, and they wanted him to be very practical. And I think they'd seen our work with the Night King on Game of Thrones, and they'd seen our work with the radiation burns on HBO's Chernobyl. They said to us, we want our own iconic villain. We need our Stranger Things version of the Night King. Well, why don't we just approach the guys who did the Night Kings? We were given various concept art designs by concept artist Michael Mayer, who did beautiful, incredible designs for the Vecna character. We were sent those designs, and then we took a full body live cast of the actor Jamie Campbell-Bower. From that point, we had quite a large, extensive build to actually create the character, which we started with this full body live cast made out of plaster of Paris. When you do any prosthetic makeup, which involves appliances overlapping onto other appliances, there's a process called floating. The plaster cast of Jamie's body, we painted completely all over with a soap product first and let that dry. And then we sculpted Vecna over the top in this wax modeling clay. And then we needed to separate the sculpture into many different parts, like a jigsaw puzzle, and mold them separately. But to separate them, you need to submerge the whole body under water. So the water sinks into the plaster of Paris and reactivates the soap, so the plasticine actually floats off the surface of the plaster of Paris. This is the biggest thing we've ever tried to float a sculpt off in our workshop. So we bought this huge paddling pool, put it in our workshop, and it took a day to fill with water. And we'd built this scaffold piped kind of frame that we could screw into the back of Jamie's body and submerge him overnight for the soap to reactivate. We just drilled all these holes into his back so all the water can basically trickle out of the body, and we'll stand him back up, get some little tools and start separating the sculpture down into many, many different pieces, make molds of those pieces and inject them with different materials such as silicone and foam latex. There's about 24 or 25 overlapping prosthetics which created the entire character of Vecna. We decided to go down the approach of doing a full body makeup as opposed to a pullover suit, because the character was going to be, it's going to have a lot of very intense, strenuous kind of movements in the show. He was going to be interacting with a lot of the main cast, and we wanted to avoid any kind of buckling that you usually get with a rubber suit. We wanted to adhere and glue all the appliances to the actor's skin, which in the end ended up with a process which started off at about 8.5 hours for the whole application process. Vecna's prosthetics, they're made, it's a combination of two different materials. We use a silicone medical gel, which is encapsulated between a vinyl skin, and it's incredibly soft, and you can change the density of the prosthetic to make it firmer or softer. So we make the prosthetics very soft, so when everything's adhered to Jamie's skin, it moves very well, it doesn't buckle. We have a lot of stretch, and it kind of contracts very easily. But due to that actual material, it's quite weighty as well, probably looking at about 10 to 15 kilos just in the head and shoulders. Then he had a full chest appliance, a full back appliance. The larger, heavier appliances were his left arm, which was basically a large sleeve, and then a foam latex glove that went over his mechanical left hands. He had dentures, which went over his own teeth, which were like clear vac form plastic sort of shells, which were artwork, so his teeth looked rotten and blackened. And he had contact lenses as well, full scleral contact lenses. So we really put him through the mill. There wasn't anything else we could get on Jamie. Biggest challenges really were to obviously make sure he could talk, he could eat, he could see, he could hear. He has got ear holes through the prosthetic there. We had to make sure, obviously, that Vecna would be able to go to the bathroom during the day as well. So we devised a kind of a system which went under his nether regions that we could pop open, and he could go to the loo, and obviously we wouldn't go with him. You know, there are all these things you need to take into consideration, that you've got a human under there at the end of the day, and they still need to eat, still need to chat. There's a lot of contributing factors that you have to take into consideration when you're doing a full body makeup. But it got to the point that not only were our team seem like a well-oiled machine, but Jamie knew exactly where his arm needed to be at a certain time, or turn his head, or, oh, I'm standing now, and now I'm lying down. For Jamie in particular, he did go into a Zen-like mode. We would start off with music every day, and because of the character, I think Jamie liked to listen to some quite aggressive, quite intense death metal, and it would be quite hardcore. There would definitely be a part during the process where he would become Vecna. He was kind of murmuring things under his breath, and you could tell he was definitely getting into the Vecna zone. And it was just really interesting because he'd be sitting there very still, moving his hand around, we'd be airbrushing, moving around him, not really making much conversation. He would be, bassy sort of voice, and then an AD would step on the trailer and, Jamie, is there anything I get? Oh yeah, could I get a coffee with whatever? And he'd suddenly sort of shift back into Jamie again, and we'd realise that we've got Jamie in the makeup chair.
I love that.
It was very clear from day one that we would be working very closely with the VFX team, and there would be some augmentation to the finish of Vecna's look. Most notably, it was the moving vines all over his body. So even though they took our physical makeup itself, they used software and animation to give all the vines a slight movement, and everything sort of slithered all over his body. And they also removed Jamie's nose as well. On each application day, we had a black nose on Jamie with some little white marking dots, so VFX could remove that in post. But in the end, we ended up with a character which was about 90% practical. One of the most challenging things with the design was creating his large left hand with his extended fingers. So this was something that the production were quite keen to us to achieve practically for the shoot. So we created, it was mechanical left hand with finger extensions, which was covered in a foam latex prosthetic that our actor Jamie wore. It was sculpted by Pat Fode and Duncan Jarman, and Pat was responsible for Vecna's left hand, which the original design from Michael Mayer, it had Vecna with really extended long fingers on the left hand. The whole idea of Vecna killing his victims by using his hand and sort of penetrating their skulls and sucking their brains out as such. We were doing tests back at the workshop in the UK where we were using crew members and wearing the hand and trying to show the duffers, oh, this is how it could potentially work. They looked incredible when he was moving them, but they almost became a little comical when he was trying to sort of penetrate some fingers into the head. So we actually reduced the length of the fingers probably by about 4 to 6 inches. Jamie came over to the UK, came to our studio, and we had a complete set of appliances, but nothing was pre-painted, it was all bare. But he had the long finger extensions at this time. We'd been wearing it ourselves in the workshop and just making sure that the mechanics worked correctly. And we could only wear it for about 5 minutes or so, and we were finding the strain on our fingers, it was making our hands ache so much. By the time you took the glove off, you could hardly move your hand because you had cramps. So we were thinking, this is going to be really interesting with Jamie. Is this going to work? He's going to potentially be wearing this for hours at end on a shoot day. And he came in, he did the test, and he wore this hand for like several hours, took it off, he was absolutely fine. It was like water off a duck's back with Jamie. We looked at a lot of different colour reference for Vecna's skin tones, for his vines. We were given beautiful concept art from Michael Mayer. That was the perfect springboard for us. And the interesting thing is it's great having two-dimensional or 3D art, but when you have to translate that into physical prosthetic appliances, we have to use different paints, different bases. We always look at real-life reference for different skin tones. So we looked at a lot of different sea life. We looked at a lot of bruising on people who'd had severe knocks to the skin, lots of blues and greens and purples. Because we had this overwhelming amount of reference of different colours and what have you, we had to really hone it in to only a few colours. We actually had a makeup palette designed by a company called Premier Products, which had 10 different colours that we were able to use as a base each day as well. We'd only have one makeup palette and we had 10 different colours. So those are the colours that we used for the entire Vecna paint scheme in the end.
Did I survive?
So for Victor Creel, his history was many years ago he had taken a razor blade and gouged through his eyes. The duffers wanted quite an extreme makeup. We had quite severe scarring going down the face, but they also wanted a remnants of maybe a burst but scarred eyeball as well on his right hand side. So the difficult thing with doing a makeup of this nature is obviously you're covering an actor's eyes. And the first thing we would normally do is, once we have a cast of the actor, is we would dome the eyes in front of the eyes. They'd almost look like half golf balls in front of the actor's eyes, and then we would make a former of the face with those on. Sculpt the makeup over the top, so when you have an appliance in the day and you stick it to the actor's face, there's actually a cavity inside. So Robert was able to open his eyes and look around inside the makeup. We were incredibly lucky with this character because we had Robert Englund, who's an absolute seasoned pro with prosthetics. He's probably worn more prosthetics than any actor going, I think. For us, this was like a dream come true. I was a huge fan of Fangoria magazine, and this is when I was starting to get into makeup effects, and I loved creatures. And in my bedroom at home at my mum's, I had my whole wall above my bedroom was a shrine to Freddy Krueger, and I just had all these posters. To actually get to work with Robert Englund, not only did we get to work on Stranger Things, but to work with Robert Englund, it's been like a dream come true. And he couldn't have been nicer. This was the fun thing with doing a makeup on Robert. He knew all the materials, he knew all the adhesives. We would be sticking a piece down and we'd be getting towards an edge, and he'd be like, I think you should be using some Prosaid adhesive there on the edge. We're like, yeah, we're literally just getting the Prosaid. And he knew every little trick that we were doing. He's so experienced with having so many makeup stuck on him. It couldn't have gone any smoother with him. We were very lucky. So this is the sculpture of Victor Creel's appliance, which you can see the difference in tone, where the appliance finishes just prior to Robert's hairline, goes around his temples and down and round onto the face. And even though we're basically only scarring through his eyes, we make the appliance a little bit larger, and we cheat the nose forward as well. It comes over at the tip of his nose here. We cheat the cheekbones, we cheat everything forward because we've had to dome Robert's eyes out underneath. So if we were literally just going to cover his eyes and put scars through them, it would look really, really bizarre. So it's actually turned out being quite an extensive appliance. And Robert's got this trademark great facial hair as well. He's got this really beautiful beard. So we had to make sure that we finished the appliance shy of his beard line as well. It's quite a big appliance to go on the face, but it was all completely pre-artworked. We'd hair punched some eyebrows into the piece, some eyelashes which kind of curled up a little bit the wrong way as well, and we put some kind of gloss materials onto the eyes themselves, so it gave us this kind of horrible mucousy feel to the eyelids. Once it was glued onto the skin on the day, we would just blend into the skin with an airbrush again and spattering various colours onto Robert's skin. About a 2-hour process, I think, on the day. I think approaching a character like Victor Creel is probably a lot more grounded and in a way easier for us because we can look at a lot of real scarring reference as well. I mean, as prosthetic artists, we look at some quite graphic material. We look at a lot of facial scarring, lots of trauma, lots of different victims who've got terrible scarring, which sometimes we do very extensive burn makeup. But for somebody like Victor Creel's makeup, we did look at facial scarring going through eyes. So we knew he was human, but we had to make the appliance look very realistic, and it had to look very grounded as well. It is a very different approach because obviously Vecna is a fantastical creature, it's supernatural, it's part of the Upside Down, so we are using lots of reference of fantasy, references from wildlife, all kinds of different references. They're two very different approaches. I'm just a huge fan of effects, whether it's practical or digital. I think still to this day, you know, the work by Rick on American Werewolf is still so significant and is still, you know, the standard that we all aim to be as good as. There's also like Rob Bottin's work on John Carpenter's The Thing, which is all practical effects as well at the time. Huge fans of these kind of early 80s movies, which, you know, even by today's standards, still haven't quite been beaten.
That's so good. I love this video. I love it so much. So guys, that's all for today's video. I hope you did enjoy. If you did, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. And I'll probably see you again next time. Peace out.